One of the more exciting things about coming back to the 40k tabletop scene was seeing all the new models that have come into existence since 5th edition. Reworks of older tanks, whole new characters with more detail and dynamic posing than the more stagnant pewter of old, and even beyond that, finding out the knights were a thing. Hulking walker mechs with high-powered weaponry, amazing to look at and almost impossible for Games Workshop to balance. It feels like a little vacation to break out my knights team. Nowhere near the level of admin the Thousand Suns can bring to the table, and certainly far less than the Genestealer cults. A very simple hammer and nail approach that can either be oppressively overbearing to an opponent or play out as a classic the hero slays the giant monster story. The models themselves feel alright. As a Chaos player, I like the War Dogs. The larger types tend to be a bit hit or miss visually. Some conversions and kit bashing here and there can drastically improve some of that, depending on the level of effort you want to put in. However, I had a personal issue with collecting my knights. A large portion of options at the time were locked behind having to order from Forge World. The tales I've heard of bent parts, missing or broken pieces, it kept me from really delving into that side of the hobby. So I certainly felt a spike of interest when the Cerastus was announced to be altered to a standard sprue model for the Knights line. A new knight that I wasn't quite familiar with. I feel like it had to look Yeah. Anyone else reminded of Eeyore? There is a depression this gives off, like it would be apologizing profusely over a loudspeaker as it slammed into enemy forces. The allied troops below would hear it coming and with excitement turn around, only to be disappointed. Oh, it's this guy again. On paper, their stats are good, certainly a step up from the average large knight. There's also a decent variety of them. And whichever genius decided they should have a massive possibility of posing, good on you. But action poses I don't think would spruce this up enough to make me excited about building one. The $200 price tag is also a bit, I can't justify it. Cool idea though. If I had enough parts and green stuff on hand, maybe I could make something of it, but really, I'm okay with the knights I've built. A little understated in some of the conversions. They still read like Chaos, but with a cleaner nature I sort of expect from a Tzeentch allied force. So I guess that's about it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget we have a Discord link below, and if you're new to the channel and are interested in tabletop gaming from the hobby to strategy to random thoughts, maybe tap that subscribe button, and a like would be awesome as well. Yeah, that's all. I do have a lot of parts on hand. And the green stuff I bought is drying up in that box. No, I couldn't. Okay, so the Cerastus Castigator. I know it's not the cool Lancer everyone loves from the redonkulous melee damage it can output, and giving Chaos Brigands assault on their weapons is super useful strategically, but I do like handing out sustained without needing the ploy for it, and the Castigator could serve as a good distraction while being backed by a wall of damage coming from a Desecrator and some Executioners. But I really need this thing to not look like it's unhappy about being alive. So breaking into all my bits and green stuff, I have a journey of self-discovery laid out before me. Don't really have a plan though. In situations like these, I tend to focus on core stylistic ideas as I come across them, but there are some initial decisions to be made. A thing most knight models have is a sense of adjustability. Their arms tend to be connected in ways that don't require glue and can be twisted and maneuvered to change weapon facings. But some armies have specific models in them that feel less like soldier number 45341, looking exactly the same as all the other soldiers in their squad, and more like a centerpiece statue from an art gallery, designed in a pose that feels like a flowing majesty of grimdark goodness. Like Magnus reaching out towards the horizon, Mortarion flowing into the fight, the avatar of Cain flexing on nerds. I think I want this Cerastus to lean more into a solid pose than the more active one, despite all the pieces it comes with that would lend more to the active build. But the building process still kind of allows me to focus on constructing singular parts in preparation for this posing idea. Leg supports and mechanisms, mid-body, hip region, full arms, including weapons. When building knights, my painting strategy involves preparing the armor pieces separately, so building just the core of the model tends to work fine for a starting point. But what kind of pose are we thinking? Well, I had an extra knight Castellan back since my tyrant came with 2 of them. That could create an elevation point on the base, and as long as the legs line up to this structure, it would allow us to use the greatest pose in the history of all poses for anything ever, the Captain Morgan. In this instance though, I kind of want to use it in reverse, putting the emphasis of motion and stress on the left leg, which supports the massive bolt cannon. The end goal being that the cannon will be pushed forward like the knight wishes to close the distance between the barrels and its target. The Tempest Warblade angled back in effort to balance out the pose while also looking ready to strike anything that approaches. Gotta say though, these weapons are kinda basic looking, a little uninspired even. Simple dual Gatling gun, the sketch outline of a sword. Time to make another decision. With the bolt cannon, I found while sifting through my Chaos Bits box that the Mauler Fiend armor that I had left over fit weirdly well over the more simplistic Imperial armor plating. This beefs up the visuals quite well, and it even adds an extended hand under the gun barrels, a bit of a nod to the Magnus pose, and I also like the idea that this knight is sort of implying, here, take my bullets, I offer them to you, or even I cast gun. No point in kit bashing if it isn't at least a little fun. To lean it more towards Tzeentch, we dip into the Thousand Suns bits and snag a floating chained book from the Sorcerer bits. And with a little jeweler's chain, we apply a slight wrap around the gun, further repeating the visual aesthetic. And while diving into my Mauler Fiend bits, I realized something. The Mauler Fiend head is about the same size as the Cerastus head. By stroke of luck, we have our next step, a giant ball of green stuff applied to represent some sort of demon engine approach that the Mauler Fiends normally have, and there we go. Feeling more and more chaosified as time moves forward. At this point, we can start to organize the pose for the gun arm, building everything up and dripping glue into the joints as I hold the arm in position, even gluing the joints in the ammo belt, removing the sag it would normally have, for the feeling that it's in motion from all the bullets being fed through it. I've also realized that I have way too many Zangor shields. Like, way too many. Applying these like banners to a set of chains and draping them over the arms provides a sense of heraldry to the model, or maybe even just a bunch of talismans used for protection. From the Lord of Change bits, I decided to add a little mascot, a brimstone horror, in essence telling a story. Maybe the brimstone is the Goliath's machine spirit, urging it to fight while occasionally needing to check the floating magic manual behind him for when it forgets some of the controlling words. Again, a little fun. Now, what to do about the just not great sword? Well, we already have the Magnus pose referenced, and Magnus does come with an extra sword option. A lot of this feels like it's coming together a little too easily, almost like something greater is guiding my hand. Am I just enacting the machinations of some eldritch being? Is everything really just happening all as planned? Maybe. Magnus's sword is great, but the connection to the more mechanical arm felt a little off. Thankfully, I had an extra slaughter brute head, just kind of floating around. I'm sure Khorne won't mind one of his beasts being the guard on my Castigator's Tempest Blade. He'll at least be a bit closer to all the skulls. A hefty amount of green stuff and an even heftier amount of patience waiting for this to dry in a lined up manner. We finish by building the arm's components, posing, and gluing, applying another set of chains and shields. But what to do with the back and shoulder armor, let alone all the armor pieces we will be applying later? Well, for the top armor, applying a Zangor shield over some cross-jeweler chain gives it that sealed cockpit look, like something is in there and you don't want it to get out. And from my Lord of Change and Kairos bits, we have some staff heads that I didn't want to use. The fish dragon as a centered hood ornament, and for the shoulders, 2 twisting Tzeentch eyes, all with a big dose of green stuff. To further push home the chaos idea, I decided to line the armor plate gap with skulls from the Citadel skull box, just a little extra detail. I also applied some goat skulls from that box to the knee armor covers, and from the Lord of Change bits, I used the massive belt buckle on the groin armor plate. Just simple little green stuff blends. Nothing too wild, but that begs the question. What do I do about the larger armor plates? The 2 chest plates and 2 leg plates. I feel I'm okay with the sword arm plate just kind of existing, but I kind of want to really go a weird direction with the armor. I mean, knights are kind of walking representations of grimdark mecha. Sometimes they're enhanced visually to almost feel like walking cathedrals, delivering litanies and sermons in the forms of bullets and blades. Cathedrals, kind of gothic, I guess, but chaos, right? That's the goal. Chaos cathedrals, summoning demons. Come on, work through it, brain. Rodin's The Gates of Hell. It feels gothic, cathedraly, but it visualizes the inverse using relief sculpture. Could I use relief sculpture? We have a ton of green stuff, but I'm not exactly skilled in molding it to be what I want. I would need something I just happen to have a lot of because Games Workshop gives you way more than you need. It would need to represent Tzeentch, but maybe side more with the mutation or demonic forms. What would my bits box even contain that would... Zangors. And oh, do I have a ton of Zangor parts. They give you so many Zangor upper bodies and heads, and I really need to get rid of them. This is perfect. Sifting through what I have, I even came across similar but mirrored poses perfect for the chest plate. Combining Zangor parts on a surface of green stuff and simply spreading it all out, creating the feeling of story and action being displayed for all to behold. Even applying more to a shin guard and then realizing that the Lord of Change box also gives you a large quantity of heads and necks to choose from. Perfect to apply to the opposite shin guard, expressing a different chapter in the story of Tzeentch. Truly, all is planned. And with all of these components separated and ready for the airbrush session, we dig into it. Black primer on all components prepped to be gold. White for all armor components that will bear the colors of my knight's house. A fade of magenta to blue. This was the color I wanted my Thousand Suns to be, until I saw how much trim there was to deal with. So yeah, shot that down pretty quick. Also, not forgetting the base, I applied a simple coat of military green to the Castellan armor, kind of Dark Angel-ish. After the airbrush session, we move into the detail painting, basing the trim of the armor in a dark brown and then applying gold over top. Applying a mid-brown shader to most of the gold, waiting for it to dry, and then using dark brown contrast paints like Garragax Sewer or Snakebite Leather to tone the gold differently, allowing for the knight to still carry the Tzeentch opulence while not just looking like a single type of gold. Black applied to all tubes and piping, occasional hits of red on wires as a minor detail that does really just add to the general feel of the mech. Flat light yellow, I believe Moon Dust from the Army Painter line, for all elements that would glow with the magic green flame my Tzeentch units all have, by swirling some golden high flow fluorescent green over everything, giving it this sort of misty effect, unifying their themes. The colored armor plates also get a pin wash of purple shader, Druchii Violet, I believe. It works beautifully as the result of mixing blue and magenta is a purple hue, so it just kind of makes sense. Also, to tie this into how I approach painting Thousand Sun models, I actually apply a decent amount of Acerman blue contrast paint over some of the paneling on the main body of the Castigator. The contrast over metal approach like this gives a level of visual oddity to the armor. You read it as blue, but as the light shines through it in certain ways, you'll get flecks of gold coming back at you, like a mystical swirl. Lastly, gem detail. My approach to gems is quite simple. Bright silver base, one of the 3 colored Ard coats that Citadel sells: Soulstone, Spiritstone, and Waystone. Similar to how the contrast over metal works, the underlying silver creates a shine that is generally seen from gemstones, and the gloss coating creates a surface shine in a similar style. Applying Golden Brand texture paste to the base and then applying Argos Dunes contrast and a Zamesi Desert dry brush over that finishes it up. Matte black border and boom. Pretty basic. It looks good finished. But I don't know. It doesn't look great. I don't often do this, but I probably should. We go back in with the airbrush. I kind of want to redo the sword in its entirety, and the shoulder Tzeentch eyes can maybe glow a bit. maybe even spruce up the brimstone to cast some light, all focusing on fluorescent colors from the golden high flow line. I start by applying Liquitex titanium white ink to the areas I want to be brightened up, and with a little control and effort, we smooth out the glow in a way that I feel is more interesting than what we had. I know people who are usually content at this stage. I have painted a thing, now to put it on my shelf. I am not that person. A model is not complete until dice has been rolled for it in the crucible of battle, so let's get to it. I already had a list in mind for this behemoth, but I don't quite want to use it just yet. For funsies, I decided to dust off my Kairos and try him out as an ally for knights, not really expecting much out of him. A local player decided to help me christen this model with a match against his orcs, a faction I have not fought in quite some time, and things went about as expected. The Castigator lived for the bulk of the game, but with a solid Wog phase and a fairly ineffective Kairos Deep Strike, my knights got bodied by the tank-hunting Squighog boys. I can only do so much with so many advanced rolls of 6 in play. Also, the application of Sustained to all my brigands amounted to a whopping 0 sustained rolls. Just not a good day. But still, a game was had, a model was used, and my Castigator is now firmly a part of my knight's army, ready to be called in when I feel it is necessary to throw my hands in the air and let Tzeentch take the wheel, with an army that doesn't require too much in the way of effort to make everything work as intended. Maybe for this upcoming 4v4 tournament. Maybe. Thanks for watching. Again, as a reminder, we have a community Discord linked in the description below. Do you have any fun kit bashes or conversions you've worked on, or maybe need some ideas for one? Join in the conversation over there. Maybe some of us can help. Or perhaps let the people know in the comments below about any of the fun ideas you've come across to make these tabletop models your own. As always, likes for the like god and subscribes for the subscribe throne. I am Kimmerix, and I'll see you in the next one.